Good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to my weekly Twitch live stream for doing Node-RED development. Now I will say up front, this is the first time I've streamed from this laptop, my non-IBM laptop, for obvious reasons. So hopefully I've got everything set up. Hopefully you can hear me. Sorted to K, Jim Bob Scotchy, great to see you in the chat. If one of you could just let me know you can hear me, I'll feel so much better. Yeah. So what are we up to? What's going on? Great. You can hear me. Thanks, guys. Yeah. So I've had a couple of weeks off, taking some time away from doing lots of Node-RED work. Some of you may have seen my news. So I'm now no longer an IBMer. I now have my own startup, FlowForge, which we're going to be doing some cool stuff with Node-RED moving forward. But this live stream is certainly still focused on Node-RED 100%. Still got plenty to do in the Node-RED project, and a lot of my time and effort is going to be still focused on that. Yeah, so if you want to check out, if you want to link to what my new thing is, what had focus when I did that? You can go to flowforge.com. So this is, let's go main screen. So yeah, flowforge.com. This is me now. This is my startup, which still sounds quite a strange thing to say out loud, but there we are. So yeah, going to be doing some interesting stuff with Node-RED, building a bigger platform around it with Node-RED at the core of it all. But you'll hear plenty of that down the line. But the key thing is, Node-RED is at the heart of what we'll be doing. So I'm not going anywhere. So yeah, so I left IBM. I left IBM after 19 years. I guess a week ago, technically, was my last day as an IBMer. After 19 years, and yeah, last Tuesday was day one of me as CTO and founder of FlowForge. So that's what I'm doing now. Yeah, it is a big step, but really excited about what we're going to be doing with FlowForge, and what we're going to be able to drive within the Node-RED project as well. So anyway, like I said, plenty of time to talk about that in the coming weeks and months. Right now, still very much focused on Node-RED. So what's going on? If you've been following along, we published Node-RED 1.3 middle of last week. Published 1.3.1 minutes later. An issue that it wasn't in the beta. It slipped in after we did the beta. As is ever the way. So we shipped 1.3.1. A few other issues have cropped up over the last couple of days, which have all been fixed. So we're ready to do a 1.3.2. Just waiting on one last fix on the file node that we want to get in, and then we'll do a 1.3.2. So yeah. Expect that to come out tomorrow at this point, unless Dave pings me at some point in the next hour saying the file node's all sorted. But tonight, okay, so that's 1.3, and then our schedule has the 2.0 release coming out end of this month, which is not that far away. Now, we're not going to rush it, but equally, because the reason we're doing a 2.0 is going to be so we can drop support for old versions of Node.js that are no longer supported. We want this to be a timely release, but it's an opportunity for us to make some changes that we wouldn't normally do in a like 1.x style release. These aren't massive things, but they are things that when people upgrade, we'll have to provide a summary of, here are some default behaviors that are changing that may or may not affect you. Or there are some changes that are potentially slightly higher impact in terms of risk. So by all means, people can stay on the 1. Whatever release, and we'll continue to provide fixes on that for a little while yet. But any new major functionality is going to be in the 2.x stream. So we have got a project plan for stuff that we've labelled for 2.0. Whether they go straight into 2.0 or in a subsequent release, we will see. But at the moment, the goal is to get lots of this into 2.0. So it's things like, there's a good example in here somewhere. Like with the join node. So if I just pull up the join node, I'm not running, but it shouldn't matter. When you add in a join node and you want it, okay, let's run so we actually get some icons here. Yeah, so great example is with the join node. Just wait for that to spin and run in the background. There. Yeah, so here we have a join node. Oh, bad example. Let's add in a new join node. Yeah, so when you add in a join node and you put it into manual mode, its default configuration is to create a string. Now, I think from our experience of how people want to use the join node in manual mode, 90% of users want key value object because they're using it to combine different streams of messages. So as an example for a 2.0 change, we're going to change the default for newly added instance of the join node will default to being key value object rather than string. So it won't affect existing nodes. It's just the default value for newly added nodes to the workspace. But it's that type of thing that it is a sort of change in behavior. I mean, arguably that's one we would have put into 1.3 without really worrying about it. But there are some other bits and pieces in here that yeah, we want to change the behavior. Like, here's a good example. At the moment, we use the host name when generating the flow file name. If the user hasn't explicitly set the flow file name, well, we're going to stop doing that because it just causes more problems than it solves for newer users when the host name changes for some reason. They move their laptop between a home network and a work network. All those sorts of things. It can just cause unexpected disappearance of your flows because your host name's changed. You restart Node-RED, and suddenly it's looking at a different flow file. So yeah, it's that type of thing. It's a change in behavior, but of course that's one we've got to code very carefully so that everyone running when they upgrade, the runtime needs to know to look for the host name, a flow file with the host name in, because it might have got created previously, and if so, it needs to carry on using it. So, yeah, again, one to be done with care. But there's a feature in here which is a bit meatier, which I was going to make a start on now because it's a bit meatier, and I'm just looking through this list trying to find it. I know it's on the list because I saw it. Yeah, here we are. So it's this item here. Can you see this? So what the card says is to make the npm install function, so how you install extra nodes, a pluggable component, which could allow for, when the card says, allow Electron Build to be incorporated in some environments. So what are we talking about here? When you ask Node-RED to install a node module, or, a node module of any sort, we have code inside Node-RED, let me just close all those out. We have code that knows how to call npm on the command line and issues the right npm install command. Just bear with me, I've gone temporarily blank in my head as to where all this code exists. Yeah, so we're inside the registry component, which is what's responsible for loading up nodes off the file system. And the installer component within that, which has this function, install module, and it does exactly what it says. You give it the name of a module, a preferred version, possibly, and possibly a URL or path to the file to install. But for the typical case, the user says, install Node-RED node random in the palette manager, and that will result in this being called. And this does a bunch of work just to work out what they've asked for, make sure it's allowed, make sure it matches all the rules for what's allowed to be installed. And then eventually it gets down to this point down here, where it builds up the npm install command. And here you can see the arguments that we pass npm. So it's an install, and then all the other flags we pass in to try and do the right thing. And then we use our own sort of command runner, our exec module, to run that, and it then either works or it doesn't work. What we want to do, though, is there's some very specific scenarios where a custom version of Node-RED might want to do some additional work to install a node. And in particular, we're talking about the card in the plan talks about Electron build. So quick detour into Electron. Hey Nathaniel, welcome to joining. So here we are, Electron Js. If you've not seen it, it's a way to wrap up a Node.js application into a desktop application. It's if you use the Slack client, the Twitch client, Facebook Messenger, all sorts of things are built using it, and it's really quite neat. And it lets you package up, I say, a Node.js application as a native desktop app. The problem is when you npm install a module, if that module has any binary dependencies like the serial port or whatever it might be, it has to be compiled for the runtime. Now, this is stuff you don't see when you click the button in the palette manager. npm in your local install does the right thing. I'm going to have to be quick on the mute button. I've got a lingering cough, so, well, you'll see. We'll see how long I can cope with talking for an hour with this cough, but yeah. Anyway, so normally npm deals with building the binary component for the right version of the node you're running in. When you run in Electron, Electron has a custom version of the node build that's likely different to your standard node you have installed. Node.js you have installed. So Electron actually provides its own command line tool called the Electron Builder, or is Electron Build? Let's see what this comes back with. So what Electron Builder can do is, if an npm module has a binary component, it does the work to rebuild it to target the Electron instance your node app is running in. So that means whenever we install a node, if you're running an Electron, you need to do this extra step. So the question is, well, twofold. One is, could we add some code in here that detects we're running an Electron, and if so, automatically call Electron? Now that's certainly one valid approach, but it doesn't scale, because there are I guess there are other use cases where you may want to trigger some sort of command line tool or command line scripts to run whenever you install something. Electron Build is just a good example, and it's a pertinent one for people in the community who are trying to do interesting stuff with Electron. So what we're going to do is, what would be better is to have a way for plugging in a custom thing that's going to deal with installing nodes. And then you can plug in that custom code. Now, I don't really know. I haven't got a design in mind for this yet, other than, we know we want this custom thing. Now, there are a couple of different possible approaches. One is we make it a plugin using the new plugin framework that via your settings file you say, here is a node installer plugin, and we will call that rather than call npm install ourselves. But then it's up to that code to do all the legwork to both do the npm install and do whatever subsequent commands it needs. So that's one possible approach. And the reason I'm starting this today, and the reason I'm talking it through with you guys on this live stream, is I don't know what the right answer is yet. So part of me talking this through is this is far more detailed than I've put thought into it yet. And I'm hoping by talking it through like this with you guys, it's going to help me kind of rationalize on what the right approach is. Because a different approach, an alternative approach, is to use the hooks API we introduced a couple releases ago. So what do I mean about the hooks API? Excuse me. Let's see. I'm sure we've got the hooks API in the design repo. So the goal here is to avoid duplication. If what we're trying to do is provide a way to run extra commands on top of npm install, then having a system that lets you swap out npm install for all your own stuff does mean, it does mean duplicating a lot of code in order to, if you still want that npm install stuff to happen. Now, I given the requirements we have gathered around this, I don't think there's a requirement to remove the npm install entirely. It is just a case of being able to run an extra command after the npm install is finished. So this is why I'm wondering about the hooks API. So in, I forget, 1.1, 1.2, we introduced the hooks API around message routing. So there are videos in the archive when I've gone through this in great detail, but the basic point is we identify in the process of routing a message from one node to another, we identified, did we get that image bigger? That's perhaps a bit too big. We identified key points where some custom code might want to be able to get inserted. So when a node is about to send a message, when we're about to route it, when we're about to deliver it, when we're about to receive it, and so on and so forth. And we defined these hook points where you can insert custom code. So given the high-level description of this npm install allowing custom code is, given the premise we probably still want the npm install to still happen, it's just a case of being able to insert some custom code either before or after it. It does suggest the hooks API is actually a better approach. Okay. So what does all that mean? Well, at the moment, where does the hooks API live? That's a very good question. Because at the moment, the hooks API lives inside the core runtime. Okay, because they're to do with the message routing path. And so yeah, we're in at Node-RED runtime lib hooks.js. And you can see the list of the valid hooks that can be registered today. Yeah, one thing we need to do is we've done a good job of adding like the plugin mechanism in 1.3, the hooks API in 1.2 or whenever it was. We haven't yet done a good job of providing concrete examples that use these things. They're all building blocks for cool stuff later on in the roadmap. But anyway, but at the moment, the hooks library lives inside the runtime component, whereas the installer lives in the registry. So if we're going to start thinking about if we want some code in the registry to be able to take advantage of the hooks API, then the hooks API can't live in the core runtime because we try and minimize sort of the cross back and forth dependency between those different modules. So we do have our util module, which has got the common event bus, logging, internationalization. So it does kind of feel, if we now want to be able to take advantage of hooks in both the runtime and in the registry, that the hooks API should move into the util bundle. So yeah, I think that's kind of makes sense to me. So so what we're going to do is start by just moving that over. Before we start that, before I start mucking around with the code, I'm going to create a new branch, git checkout -b. What are we doing? Npm install hooks. We'll call the branch. Okay, so to begin with, we are literally just going to drag the hooks file down into util lib. Okay, and at that point, nothing's going to work, but that's fine because, well, it's to be expected. So we're still in hooks.js. First things first, we can just fix up this. Well, we can tidy up this reference to the log. Okay, because we can just load it locally now. And then if we come back up into the runtime and just search for hooks. So here you can see everywhere where we access the hooks module. We can just change, well, no, before we do that, let's go back to the util bundle and go to its index, because we need to export the hooks API from, yeah, we need to export it so it can be imported elsewhere. And needs some proper documentation, but runtime hooks, just leaves it at that for the moment. I'm not going to spend my time writing documentation for you guys. on the live stream. I will tidy that up before any of this gets near being merged. But okay, so we've moved hooks into the util bundle. There is one other bit to do. Hooks spec. So every source file has a corresponding test file in the test source tree. So just as we've moved over the hooks API, we need to move that over as well. And then make sure we just fix up any requires between them. So right, so that's fixed the unit test for hooks. And then where were we? So yeah, looking for everywhere where we let's do it properly. Searching for, so let's search for the hooks API. And really confusing. Atom, I've told it to search in, oh no, okay, it's done exactly what I've asked it to do. I asked it to do the wrong thing. So I asked it to, I was telling it to search in the test tree, which is why it was finding it. Here we are. So this is actual runtime code. So here, rather than require hooks from /hooks, it's moved. Just as we require out these things out of the util module, we can do the same deal here. That's one. And there's this one. In fact, you can see I've slightly different syntax, but that's all good. And this one. Okay, so I save that and let's go look at the terminal. And Node-RED has started up. Good, good. So that means we've got all the imports right. Yeah, and we haven't had to change any functional code. All we've done is just move where the file is, change the require statements, so that code now gets loaded from the right place. Cool. What I might do at this point is just verify, run the unit tests on the hooks, just make sure I've got that tidied away properly. Where is it? Test unit at Node-RED. Oops. Util lib hooks. Cool. So the unit tests pass in their new location. So what I'm actually going to do at this point, in an effort to keep things tidy, yeah, we can ignore those. So these are the changes I've made so far. Just moved the file, changed the references, and we say move hooks to util package. So just commit as I go along, just to keep track. Okay, so now that's moved. What we're going to do is come into the registry, come to the installer, and we're going to require in the hooks component into the installer. And let's just check where we checking where we actually call exec. So there's here, which is add module. So this is the key one. This is the one we're most interested about. What we now want to do is wrap this with a pre-install and post-install hook. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. And at this point, I can't remember how the hooks API works. So I'm going to go look at our main node.js. which does use the hooks API. Okay. So how does this work? So we called hooks.trigger. We pass the name of the hook we are triggering and the payload for that event. And then we provide a callback. If there's an error, then, if there's an error, there's an error. Well, it's then up to us to define the behavior based on what gets passed through. So the message routing hooks let you return an error and it'll get logged. But if you return false, then it doesn't pass the message down doesn't do any more processing of that message. That's we'll need to think, do we need an equivalent capability in the hooks we're going to wrap the install in? But where are we? So we're in installer, and okay, so we've got all that information. We're going to do a hooks.trigger and say pre-install. Let's call it pre-module install. One thing I'm aware of with these events is we didn't namespace them at all. So the events are literally the names you see here. It's not like message on send, message pre-route. It's, whether we come to regret not namespacing them better, I don't know. But it does mean just need to be a bit mindful. If I said pre-install, are there scenarios where actually there's something else to do with install that you want to distinguish? But so it's pre-install or pre-module install. I'm going to go with pre-install for the moment, fully reserving the right to change my mind on that. But we then need the event that the data we're going to pass to pre-install, and we'll think what that needs to be in a minute. And then we have the callback for after that trigger has been evaluated. Let me just scroll up. What sort of function are we in? We're in an async function. Does it return active promise at the end? Yes, it does. Okay. Okay, so at this point, sorry, I'm lost. Where am I? Right, so because the trigger API doesn't use promises, it uses callbacks, but we're in the middle of a promise world. Just need to think how best to do this. What are we inside at the moment? So we are inside an async function. Okay, for now, there might be a more elegant way of doing this. We're going to return a new promise, which can resolve or reject. So inside that, we will call the pre-install trigger. We will then I'm just sort of scanning through how we deal with all the error cases. This is where it always gets slightly hairy when you're trying to combine promises and callbacks, and you've got to make sure that the promise always resolves, or the promise always completes, and any errors get rippled up properly. And this, I always screw this up the first go round of converting between promises and callbacks, and yes. So just bear with me a sec. It's one of these things I just have to stare at it for a moment or two to... Right. So we'll call pre-install with some sort of payload, and we'll look at that payload. Hey Alex, thanks for joining the live stream. So we'll call any pre-install hook. Once that's done, we can then do the install, and we do the install by calling our own exec function. Then, if that's succeeded, there is, depending on what happened. Ooh, Atom's got very sluggish suddenly. So if the install succeeds, you can see there's a bunch of work we have to do. We check, are we doing a... yeah, there's a bunch of scenarios we have to worry about in the internals. Like, is it an install or is it an upgrade? I think if we're going to call any hooks, we need to call them here. Hooks.trigger post install, and again a payload which is to be determined. And then when that completes, we can then do that final bit of work. Pre-install, we then do the install. If the install succeeds, we then do post-install. If that succeeds, we then do the extra work. Okay. Now the question is, so I've got some return statements here, which were fine when they were inside a promise callback, but now we're in a, inside a promise then function, but now we're inside a callback. This require isn't going to do what it used to. Yeah, I'm going quiet because I'm just trying to think. I've got to get this right. I've got to make sure the result of calling this, I can't just return it. Do I just call resolve? Is that the equivalent of what it was doing? Because all these error conditions will come out when the exec run call, if that hits any errors, that's going to come out down here. So up here we are in the good scenario. So I think think these ones we call the resolve function that this new wrapping promise is providing. We resolve with that, I think. Okay. So I think that's good. So the question then is, do we need a hook for post-install if there's an error? Now, I'm always of the opinion it's easier to add things later when you discover the need than to add something that's actually a mistake and then regret it and have to try and remove it. So, for the use case we're focused on right now, we're primarily concerned with getting the good path. Having these hooks get triggered at the right time on the good path. So let me just, where am I? Let's get my closing braces all right. Let's see. Nope. Does that run? So that runs. So a very crude test at this point would be, just load up the editor, fire up the palette manager, and pick something to install. Yeah, well that, okay, that install has worked. Okay, so I've not broken the good path. Noxie may be confused, but shouldn't the check is existing be on the install, not the post-install? No, because right, if this was a module that was already installed and how to explain? If this was a request to install a module you already had installed, then it would have already been rejected, saying module already loaded. However, with 1.3, there is another path. There's another way that, because of the subflow npm modules we've added in 1.3, it's complicated. Basically, you might have a node module installed that you don't know you have installed, and we won't tell you have it installed because it's being used inside a subflow module that you can't see inside of. If you then ask to install that module, the runtime will appear to install it because we don't want to confuse matters by telling you, well, you've already got that module installed, even though you don't know you have it installed because it's invisible to you because it's deep inside the internals of a subflow. So yeah, is existing means this is a module. Well, there's a big comment there. What does it say? This is a module we already have installed as a non-user module. So it's an internal one. It's not a user one. The user is installed. That means it was discovered when loading, but was not listed in package.json and has been hidden from the editor. The user has requested to install this module. Having run the npm install above, it will now be listed in package.json. So we update the registry to mark it as a user module, so it will now be available to the editor. yeah, it's part of the horrible internals of how we do the subflow modules, which, yeah, is horrible, but necessary. Jim Bob, do you need to add pre-install, post-install hooks to the hooks array in hooks.js? Yes, we do. That's next on the list. Let's have a look. Because this list of valid hooks, we don't use that to just spotted some references I missed. Util hooks. Let me just fix these up. That array isn't used to police who can trigger, what hooks can be triggered. We actually use this valid hooks to police what you can register against, if that makes sense. So that's why it's worked so far, is because we don't care what gets triggered, and we haven't tried registering anything on it yet. So we're going to do module install hooks and pre-install post-install. Okie doke. Oh, why is that blown up? I think that's all good. I've had NodeMon crash out with this e-fault quite a lot today for some reason. Don't know. Yeah. Don't know if it's a red herring. Let's see. Cool. That's started up all right. Yeah, not losing sleep over that. Okay. What I really need at this point is a quick and hacky way to test the hooks. And the way a user would really do this would be they would create a plugin to install these hooks. But I'm just going to take full advantage of the inject node, because why not? Hooks dot, and again I can't remember the API at all. In fact, it should be, where's our design doc? Should be in here. Yes, red.hooks.add the name and the function. So inject node red.hooks.add pre-install function, the event, or just a console.log pre-install in the event. And we'll do the same for post install. Okay, so let's just check. Yep, so Node-RED's restarted. Let's go back to the editor. What node shall I install? No op. If we switch to the console, so there you can see my pre-install console.log and the post-install console.log. Cool. So that's the golden path done. Well, no, it's not done. We don't pass in any useful information yet. Let's do that, and then we can say at least one path of code is done. So we're going to create a trigger payload, and we'll pass it in. At the moment, I don't see any reason why they would need to be different. Let's go and have a look. If we go look at the docs for the message routing payloads, or the other send event objects. So again, this is in the message routing path. We have the message being sent, the source node, and the destination node. It's the type of structured information. So let's have a little think about, what's the information we'd want to pass in here that might be needed down the route. That might be needed by any pre or post install trigger. So I think the install directory, so what directory it's been installed in, is going to be important. We want to log the name of the module. In fact, what's the actual npm install command we run? Install name, because there are some tricky edge cases here, which there are some tricky edge cases. I just need to. So if we call this with a module, then we use that. If you also pass in a URL, then we use the URL as the install name. It's the argument you pass to npm install. So we build up, actually install name becomes module at version if you also specify a version. If it's a full path that includes a package.json, then we'll set the install name to be the module. We go look up at the package.json to get the actual module name, because that could be different, and we use that instead. Down here, we do some work if the user is using the new allow and deny list to control what is allowed to be installed. Then we do some extra work before we try npm installing it. We have to go and get find out what version, because it might be the user is saying do not install anything less than version 1 of this module, and if someone says install module at latest, they could specify a version of latest. So we need to translate what does latest mean in terms of version number, so we can check it against the allow and deny list. So we do an extra call to npm to get it to tell us what's the actual version number that tag maps to. Then, so I think by the time we get down here, module, I'm pretty confident in, for all these different scenarios, I think, for all these different scenarios, module is going to be the name of the module we're about to install. So version, and I'm going to have to do some testing, which I won't do on the live stream because it's going to be slightly tedious doing all that, but we're going to pass in, passing in what's being installed, module version, the directory, and you know what, we should probably just pass in the URL as well, if it's set. Okay, so given that, what does our... should it have an is upgrade? Should we pass is upgrade as well? Good question. Is existing and is upgrade. Yeah, why not? Okay. Where are we at? Check. Node-RED restarted. Oh, let's think of a... Because this is... yeah, I haven't done a lot of Node-RED flow creation on this laptop because it's a new laptop. I haven't got very many extra nodes in. And I'm trying to think, what are the standard extra ones I always install? RBE we already have installed. Oh, it shouldn't be this hard. There's 3,000 to choose from, but have we got daemon? No, let's do that. That's a useful one to have. So hit install and let's go look at. Cool. So you can see the pre-install hook. It got the name of the module and the version we're going to install, the directory we were running the npm install in, and the existing is upgrade and URL undefined, which is what you would expect because it wasn't that path. Cool. Okay, so that's the good path pretty much sorted. What we now need to think about is two things. One, what if pre-install returns an error? This is where I can't remember all the semantics. Yeah, so what if this pre-install throws an error? Uh-oh. So that means error is going to be yeah. Let's double check. I don't think the hooks API does any built-in tracing because it's on the message path, so I didn't want... Yeah, it doesn't do any logging. But we're going to... no, let's not do that. No, let's think what we're going to say. So if error at this point, we are going to you know what? There might be a more elegant way of, I'm just copying and pasting that log, and then rather than, oh, that's a point, these will throw. Is that a problem? Where are we? Yeah, that is a problem. Oh, okay. One thing at a time. One thing at a time. Right, let's go back into... let's just tidy up what I've got open. I'm going to take out that throw new error because I need to go back and fix the error logging. So I'm just going to comment that out because that's not what we're looking at right now. So what I've spotted is... it's quite hard to follow. It depends how familiar you are with promises, but this exec run function returns a promise. So if promise is an object that says at some point in the future I will do this work, and when I've done that work I will call the then function with the result. But if I hit an error, and if I just collapse that code down, if I hit an error, then I will call the catch function with the result. But equally, any errors thrown in here will also get percolated up to the catch. So, oh man. Okay. Like I said, this always trips me up. So the problem we've got here is I'm calling throw from inside this catch. So I'm throwing the error from inside this catch. But that is no longer going to percolate up because we're inside this asynchronous callback. What we want to do is call that reject with these errors. Yeah, so in fact, it's the same deal. No, it's not. I'm going to do reject. And we've got unit tests that test all this. So what I should do before I get too carried away is run those unit tests to make sure these errors are getting passed up properly. In fact, before we get too carried away at all, that's what I should do. So test unit node-red, where are we? Registry lib installer. No, it has. The unit tests have passed, which would normally give you a good feeling. I'm just going to try, I'm commenting out those reject statements I just put in. And the tests are failing. Good. It's much better to show the tests are broken and then fix them than think you fixed the tests and they pass silently and it turns out you mucked it up all along. So, there. Those rejects were absolutely the right thing to have. Cool. So let's go back to where we were. We're going to have this. What happens when this install hook, the pre-install hook, throws an error? I think the right thing to do is going to be to fail the install. And we'll do it with whatever error has. We will log whatever error has befallen us. So let's run node-red. Good. Bring up the editor, reconnect it. Let's install the ping node. Oh, failed to install. Install failed, check log, view log. Oh, interesting. This log tells me we have installed the ping node. What does the console say? Oh, here we are. Uh-oh, install failed. Installed module is carried on. Why is it carried on? It is carried on because if there's an error, it does this work and it rejects the promise. It then just carries on regardless. So we need a return there to stop it carrying on regardless. Man, right. That's going to have restarted Node-RED, which is fine. Let's except the editor is now out of sync because the ping node didn't properly go in. So if we go to the ping node, I'm just going to remove it. Cool. And go back and reinstall it. Install. So it's failed. View log. So that's the remove I manually triggered. Here you can see the install has started, but it's never finished. We'll come back to that. But here you can see pre-install was triggered and then error, uh-oh. So we are properly logging the error. Now why are we getting... I'm just want to work out where's that being logged. I'm 188. So that is doing, that's calling that reject. Yeah, I'm just intrigued who's doing a big console.log of this full error here. Yeah, who's doing that? It's probably okay for them to be doing that because I suspect, no. Oh, yeah. Someone's doing a console.log when they maybe shouldn't, or maybe they should. I think I do the console.log just to make sure we don't lose information by not logging it. Add module. Sorry, I'm just going quiet whilst I try and remember the overly complex layers of API calls that the install will flow through. Add module. Tarball if module. The catch. Right. Runtime nodes install module. I just want to make sure the fact we're seeing that full stack trace, like I said, I suspect I've left that in because sometimes we have the habit of just displaying an error message and not the full stack, which then makes it hard to track down. The irony being we're doing that and I'm now struggling to track it down. But install module. I would dearly love to know who is doing it. Who is console.logging this error? Registry.install module. Is it? Are we still inside the registry? Where's install module? Installer enabled. Uninstall module. Install module gets calls installer.install module. Install module. No. Yeah, and that's inside the function we're dealing with. So who's doing that console.log? Okay, I'm not going to track that down on the live stream because it's just a bit tedious going to track that down. But key point being, we get the install failed. It hasn't, we've managed to block the install, which is good. Then the slightly trickier question is in the post-install hook. What happens if an error is thrown there? Excuse me. The question is, that's potentially, but by this point, the post-install hook is called after npm install has successfully completed. If the post-install hook fails for some reason, what can we do? Can we do anything? We can log it through an error, but the net result is you still have that module installed. So the question is, if that throws an error, should we back out the install? Because we don't want to leave it behind. And that gets hairy, particularly around subflow modules and yeah. Let's just have a look at the remove. No, it's an uninstall module. Okay, so this has raised a bit of a red flag. Again, okay, this is sprawling all over the place now in terms of things I just need to go double check, which, yeah. Yeah, so we'll log a warning, but yeah, we'll log it, install post-install error, we'll call it. So server.install post-install runtime.json. Let's go find our messages. There's server install post-install error. Error running post-install. Oh, yeah. Trouble is, this isn't really end user messages. That's my. Yeah. Oh, I'll live with that. Error running post-install hook. I'll put that in quotes. Translations will know not to translate that, hopefully. Okay, and then I just got notified what's... Yes, oh. Where's my window gone? Ooh, item just died. So now let's move our O to the post install. Let's go reinstall ping again. Or, well, try to install ping again. Okay, so it's added to the palette. Good. So the install was successful, but we have had the message, error running post-install hook, error, uh-oh. It's not ideal, because in the case of Electron Build, the post-install hook failing means the module won't work. So yeah, it does kind of feel we might need a bit of a better story, but this will do for the time being. As it's better to be able to iterate on that down the line. Okay, so one more thing to care about. Got too many windows open, tabs open. Yeah, I'm not expecting to complete this feature tonight, and I'm gonna go for a few more minutes, but then I will be stopping. One thing that caused me to pause and go quiet just now was I've remembered we also support providing a full tarball over the API. So rather than just a URL to the module file itself, which we deal with separately. So install tarball is a function, and it does a bunch of work. It unpacks the TGZ somewhere, then it calls install module. Good. That's what I wanted to double check. So all the hook stuff we have will still get triggered if you go down this path as well. Cool. All right. Well, that's most of it. But for completeness' sake, I want to go to uninstall module. And down here, we're going to do pre-uninstall. Then we trace it, and we need to define our trigger payload again. And you might notice this one already is wrapped in a new promise, so I don't have to spend as much time staring at the code. It's, at least to my eye, I can already see there's the resolve and reject functions in place to be able to mix callbacks with promises. So pre-uninstall will get triggered. Once that's done, we'll then actually exec the uninstall. And once that's done, we'll then do the post-uninstall. And when all of that is done, we then finish logging and reporting and blah, 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 and do all the tidy up. What we don't have, in fact, if I go back up to the post-install, no, one thing, blah, blah. Let's finish the job. Trigger payload, let's put some data inside this payload. What have we actually got? We've got module, yeah, we only know the module and the directory. I think none of the others are pertinent. Yeah, okay, this is good. If I just go back up to the before anyone reminds me, let's go into hooks and add in pre uninstall and post uninstall as well. So if, for the install case, we'll run the pre-install hook, and all being well, we then run the exec command, the npm install command, and all being well, we then do the post install. However, if there is an error doing the install, and we end up down here with all these different things like module not found, then we don't call, there is no post install trigger. I guess the question is whether there should be. Are there scenarios, and this is where we can overthink it. I've added for the actual use case, run Electron build after npm install. We only actually needed post install. Excuse me. But for symmetry, it makes sense to have pre-install. To extend that symmetry, if you have a pre-install, it makes sense to have a post-install on both good and bad cases. But I'm not sure what that post-install on a bad case would look like, or what's the scenario that needs it. So again, I'm inclined to not try and over-define that today. Yeah, it's going to be easy to add in another hook or another scenario for that. Except if we wanted to call it post-install, but add an extra property to the payload saying an error. So post-install with an error, which would mean people if we did that on day one, people implementing it in post-install would have to check for the error property to know, is this a clean install or not? And that would be troublesome if we were to add that later, because their code wouldn't know to check for error, and it would start getting called for both good cases and bad cases. The alternative being a completely different hook for post-install error. But yeah, I kind of feel, yeah, I'm not going to over specify it here and now. We'll see how that sorts itself out. Okay. So we've done pre-install, post-install, pre-uninstall, post-uninstall. I think that'll do for now. There's a whole bunch of work before this can be merged around unit tests for it all. I've run the unit tests, so I'm happy things are working. See again, look, fatal error redefault. Anyway, yeah, I'll stick this in, and what I really need to do is write up a design note for it, because yeah, it is useful having this stuff written up and pictures drawn to help explain it. But yeah, no, that's been a useful hour and a half of thinking through in the code, and actually, no, I'll tell you the truth. 5 minutes before I sat down, my assumption on this was going to have to be a plugin somehow of replacing all of the install code and letting you do something entirely custom. I think using the hooks API had not even occurred to me until I started talking it through like an hour and a quarter ago. So, but this does feel like the right solution. I think where it might, you could imagine, so one downside of this approach versus something that replaces the install code entirely is this will still call npm install with our opinionated set of flags, which we don't let you modify. So we don't let you modify the npm install command, but we will but we will let you run commands before or after it. So there is something to be said. What if the pre-install... do we allow the pre-install to return to somehow... we provide pre-install with the command we're going to run and allow it to modify the command that's going to be run. So there's some interesting thoughts around that. Maybe if pre-install returns false, just like with the message routing, returning false isn't an error. It just says don't run the npm install. That gets a little iffy because there's a bunch of extra work after the npm install related to installing nodes. So all this stuff to do with adding the modules and set pending updates and all sorts of stuff. But there is an interesting thought around, were we to provide the trigger, the npm command we're about to run, and allow the user to customize that command, or allow the plugin to customize that command. That's an interesting thought, but perhaps one for another day. Not going to dwell on that one tonight. Cool. So I think I'm going to pretty much leave this here for now. Like I said, very pleased with where this has ended up. Next steps will be some unit tests. So the unit tests validate that the hooks get called at the right point. Unit tests that validate, depending on what the hooks do, what's the expected behavior. And a design note to properly document what these hooks are, how they can be used, what their payloads are. Because we need to do lots more of that. Just looking at the questions. So Noxy, so when will there be more info about what Flowforge is? There will be more information when we have stuff to share, I think is the general gist. It's super early. The company's, we only started last Tuesday. And I use sort of we in the royal we. Right now it is me. We've got some people lined up to join, which hopefully in about a month we'll be able to announce some growth around the team, which is awesome. Really looking forward to that. And we all in good time. We'll share more details about what we're doing with Flowforge and what the goals are. But Chad Suburbia, welcome. Do you do C++? Badly. Not for some time. I've got the Arduino stuff I do, which is sort of in sometimes looking a bit C++ like, but my C++ is very hacky and unexercised. So it's an interesting thought. I've often wondered with Node-RED, with the sort of performance critical parts of some of the core, whether there are benefits to doing binary versions of some of the internals of Node-RED, so we can optimize inside the V8 engine. But that's one of those rainy day ideas that who knows. I'm intrigued by, but we've got more than enough to get on with without getting distracted. So otherwise, my local copy of the stream has hung, so I don't know. Hopefully I'm still coming through. Keep an eye out. So 2.0 we'll have a beta of in a couple of weeks. That's to coincide with the Node.js release at the end of April. I'll be back next Monday, regular stream Monday evenings. If you're on YouTube, do like and subscribe if you've watched the whole thing. It's interesting, I do get stats of what's the average watch duration on YouTube, and it's, let's just say people aren't watching the whole video, but it's nice to know people dip in and out of it, and I suspect fast forward through great swathes of it. So do leave a comment if you're watching on YouTube and you've fast forwarded to the end to see what I say. Otherwise, have a good week all. Stay safe, stay sensible, and I will be back next Monday. Cool. How do I stop this thing? I'm out of practice. There we are. Good night all.